Morning and welcome to Race Industry Now, the weekly webinar series from ePowerTrade, presented to you by ARP, Performance Plus Global Logistics, PIC, Shopmonkey, and Fifth Third Bank Motorsports. I am Francisque Savignan, the founder and CEO of ePowerTrade, the global platform for the performance and racing industry. This is episode 352, and we're going to be talking to UEM and Total Seal. With me this morning are Judy King, the co-founder of ePowerTrade, and our wonderful host, Mr. Brad Gilly. Judy?
Thank you, Francisque, and thank you everybody for joining us today. We have a huge audience of attendees today, so I'm going to take a second and kind of explain the concept of this platform. We came from PRI. We love that trade show. We're there every year, but that's 3 days out of the year. So we come in and created a racing and performance destination so engine builders, fabricators, buyers from around the world could look at our suppliers that are showcasing just like if they were at a trade show. So now we've got buyers, engine builders that can reach out to suppliers all year long and see their latest technology and products. Kind of a cool concept. So please feel free to use it. It's free to use. Brett?
Yeah, it's a really cool concept, by the way, and so thankful for both of you and really everyone who works really hard behind the scenes as well for everything that ePowerTrade does. It's just an incredible resource for sure. So, well, I'm excited about this one, Judy and Francisque. We'll talk to you guys here in just a little bit, but this one's going to be fun. Our topic today, what do golf balls have to do with fuel economy, by UEM and Total Seal. And before I introduce our panelists, I do want to let you know that at any time, if you have a question, just feel free to type it into the chat and we'll answer as many as we can. But I think you're going to find this one to be pretty fascinating. So our panelists today, Pim Vandenberg, Director of Sales for UEM, Bill Robertson, the Western Territory representative for UEM, and my favorite tribologist, actually the only one that I know, but he's still my favorite regardless, Lake Speed Jr., who is always awesome to have on here. And this is also featuring Speed of Air engine technologies, which is just going to be a lot of fun. Pim, let me go ahead and just start with you. Give us a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking about here today. I'm pretty fascinated by this technology.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So when I started with the company, Scott Sulpricio, the owner of UEM, talked to me about this special technology that he had worked on with people from Speed of Air. And we actually, as UEM, are licensed to use the technology and apply it to our pistons and make the high-performance piston for SOA. And today we're going to be talking about pistons with golf ball dimples or turbulators, and it's pretty exciting what it does to an engine and performance of that engine, the emissions of that engine, and so yeah, it's we'll get more deeper into it, but it's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, which is just going to be really, really cool. Bill, let's talk to you here for a minute, and I see we even have a couple of things sitting there behind you. Give us a little bit of an overview of what you have for us.
You're muted, Bill.
You're on mute, Bill. There we go.
Now we're cooking. So I've been the tip of the spear on testing. Pim alluded to the excitement that Scott Sulpricio, the owner of UEM, had about the Speed of Air technology. And so it was tasked to some of the sales side to go out and find willing partners. And so we found a willing partner up in Edmonton, Canada with DFC Diesel. And so I'll be bringing a lot of perspective today about the testing we've done with them.
Oh, that's going to be wonderful. And Lake Speed Jr., boy, with what you do with not just Total Seal piston rings, but what you've done within the racing industry as well, is just nothing short of incredible. And I'm curious because obviously there are a lot of parts working together. And with Total Seal, we know you guys are pretty much knee deep in something new when it comes to technology and all of that. So tell us where you fit in here.
Well, thanks, Brad. I appreciate all those kind words. It's great to be able to share the platform here with everybody today. you guys, people who watch these webinars before and have seen me talk, they know I kind of get excited about stuff. Well, I'm really excited about this technology. And the main reason why is we've mentioned in previous ePart Trade webinars is that fuel is the enemy of your engine. And for people who haven't heard me say that before, just bear with me. I know that sounds kind of shocking, but it's the truth that it's not the fuel that burns. That's not the problem. It's the fuel that doesn't burn, because engines don't run on liquid fuel. Now, we put liquid fuel into the fuel tank, but that's not what's burning in the combustion chamber. What burns in the combustion chamber is the fuel that's vaporized. And that's great. But the fuel that doesn't vaporize, because it's not properly atomized, because all atomization is taking that big glass of fuel and turning it into a small droplet of fuel. You know, this morning here in North Carolina, it was really foggy. It was, atomized water droplets, but it still wasn't a vapor where you could, burn it if you would. Like, you can't really burn air, but you get my point. So from a piston ring perspective, what's the enemy of the piston ring is that unburnt fuel. And in a diesel, it's a real double-edged sword. It's double bad, because what happens in a diesel is when that liquid fuel doesn't burn, one of two bad things happens. Number one, either that liquid fuel makes it past the piston rings through the end gap and gets in the oil. Now that fuel has a lower viscosity and lower lubricity. It doesn't have any anti-wear additives in it. Basically, it's contaminating your oil and making your oil not work as well. So guess what happens? Your engine wears out faster because you have high fuel dilution, because the fuel is working against the oil. But the other bad thing that happens is if that liquid fuel doesn't burn, but it carbonizes, it turns into soot. So when we see these diesel trucks go down the road and it's rolling coal, all that black smoke coming out, that's actually not smoke. It's soot, because it's those droplets of fuel that couldn't burn, but they carbonized. Now, that carbon, that black soot, is what actually wears out the engine. And if it gets, again, past the rings and gets into the oil, now it can cause bore polishing. It can cause all kinds of other wear in the engine. So it's bad. Regardless, when fuel doesn't atomize properly and doesn't burn, it's bad for your engine. I could go on all day about this, so I'll shut up.
Lake,
but that's the setup, right? You got to understand where we begin. The whole point of this is fuel that doesn't atomize properly and can't turn into a vapor is bad news for your engine.
Tim?
Yeah, no, I actually, I have a picture, and of course, now that I want to bring it up, that shows really well what Lake is talking about, and it's a before and after of. And so I'm going to share my screen here. I hope this works. Let me see here. Can everybody see this picture?
We cannot yet.
No,
Not yet. Okay, hold on a second. Let me see if I'm doing this correctly. It says share screen. There it is. Can you see that picture?
Not yet. It's
Not
not
yet.
showing up for us.
Okay. Wonderful technology. Anyway, so what I wanted to share with you guys is a picture of and this is from Joe Malfa, who's applied this technology specifically in Indian motorcycles quite a bit, and it shows a before and after of the same piston. And so the piston on the right hand side is a carbon piston, the way it ran without the dimples, and on the other side is the same piston, dimpled and used, and it's a before and after basically. And you can see why it makes such a difference. The burn is much more complete. Exactly what Lake was saying earlier. You can see how there's a much completer burn, much cleaner burn. Obviously, there's still some carbon deposits happening, but you can see the day and night difference between the two in this picture.
That's pretty amazing. You know, and I know, look, everyone, when we start talking about engines of any kind, internal combustion, you know, the carbon buildup and all of the different things that we fight, various ways to clean it out and things like that, to look at that and see how it comes out. And Bill or Pim or Lake Speed, I don't know who the best person is to answer this, but tell us about this technology. You know, we talk about golf balls and they have dimples for a reason, but golf balls are designed to fly through the air and go as far as, you know, you can hit it or whatever. But pistons are something that are just going up and down. And we talk about fuel burn. We talk about the carbon buildup, efficiency, all of that. How does this technology apply to pistons?
Bill, you want to take that one?
Sure. I think, Brad, the best way to describe it is in the diesel specifically, we're pulling in dry air. We're pulling in a charge, right? So when we first thought about the best way to test this, it was about solving problems. So back to what Lake was talking about, we've got fuel dilution issues, we got soot issues, we've got fuel efficiency issues, and we've got emissions issues. And one of the things that was kind of interesting to learn very early on about the dimple pistons was different people that you'd talk to that had run them and taken the engine apart talked about the fact that you could just take a rag and wipe the top of the piston off, and it pretty much would return to the way that you put it in. So what we came to understand was that the turbulence that those dimples create, the assumptions are it's moving the boundary layer down, that excitement of air is doing exactly what Lake's talking about. It's vaporizing that fuel to a far greater degree. This isn't a revolutionary change, it's an evolutionary change. But nonetheless, it continues to improve. So the more testing we do, the more we're able to go back and look at stuff, the more we're able to improve that. So if you can imagine, and this is available to see on the Speed of Air website, there's a great demonstration video there. So our gapless second ring is contributing by a better tug coming in because we get more vacuum pulling on it. When the piston comes up, all those little turbulators, if you can imagine those columns of air coming into the system or into the cylinder, we're starting to disturb those. We're making a lot of noise in there. When the piston comes back up and we're starting to make some heat, the injector fires, that air is far more turbulent than it was before. We haven't changed anything else except that surface layer. And so when we better atomize that fuel and that lights off, we see a much completer burn. There's far less material left to gather on the piston. There's less soot, there's less everything. Emissions are much cleaner. So we've made it more efficient. That's how the dimples contribute to that combustion process. They're basically disturbing that air to a different level.
Lake, if I ask you real quick, he mentioned something about gapless rings. And look, I've watched a bunch of your videos too. We've had you on here a lot talking about having that perfect gap, not too much, not too little, for all of the various reasons. So but could you expand on that just a little bit?
Sure. I mean, the gapless piston ring is actually the foundation of Total Seal. So Joe Moriarty, I'm going to say probably about 55 years ago, I'm going to be within a year or so here, invented the gapless ring. Little quick side story. He was actually working on a rotary engine for General Motors, and they needed a seal, but obviously you couldn't have a gap in it because it would leak and that would reduce the efficiency of the engine. So he came up with this idea of having two interlocking rings so that you could still have that gap for thermal expansion, but they were offset 180 degrees from each other in an interlocking ring. So the ring could still expand with temperature, never butt the ends, but there's no gap. And he patented that technology because of the emissions that rotary engines had. Back when he founded the company, GM never did anything with it, but he took that, we'll call it seed money, that became Total Seal. He started doing it for racing engines and for methanol fueled engines, things like that, where it had a lot of fuel, liquid fuel going into the cylinder. That physical barrier was a game changer. I know, like, Ronnie Shaver and those guys at Shaver Specialty Racing Engines and a bunch of sprint car guys. I mean, that's their piston ring of choice, is that gapless second ring, because it's that physical barrier that keeps that liquid methanol from getting into the oil and doing damage to the engine. Well, that same principle applies here in that diesel. Like Bill said, what's different on a diesel compared to a carbureted or port injected gasoline engine is the air charge coming in is dry. There's no fuel coming in with it. In a diesel, you're using that injection of fuel to basically auto ignite the fuel. You're jumping up the compression, you're jacking up the temperature, what then causes auto ignition of the fuel and then fires up. So it's a delicate balancing act there, which is why this turbulence, like you mentioned, is so important. But because you have liquid fuel coming in, that's where that gapless second ring acts as that physical barrier to keep that liquid fuel that's spraying in from just going straight into the crankcase, essentially, or at least get by the top ring and the second ring and then into the oil. It's also being that physical barrier to keep the soot out. And one of the things about that better seal, that better tug in, and also on the compression stroke, keeping the blow-by down, what we've seen in independent testing with the gapless second ring in a diesel is that you get faster turbo spooling. Basically, you make more boost at lower RPM because you have less blow-by, right? So we can measure there's less blow-by, that curve, if you will. If you look at blow-by relative to engine speed, that curve matches the change in the boost curve. So if you take a conventional gap ring and a gapless second ring in a diesel application, and you map the blow-by, you're going to see a change, a delta in blow-by because of that gapless ring. Well, that change in that delta actually correlates to the change in boost with the engine as well. When you increase the boost, you increase the power, so you increase the efficiency. And that's really what this is all about, is achieving more efficiency. So that when you couple the gapless second ring with the speed of air technology, what you end up with is this combination that almost sounds too good to be true, but it isn't. That you're getting better fuel economy, you're making more power, the oil is gonna live longer, and you reduce engine wear in the process because you're getting less soot, less fuel contamination into the oil because you're actually burning the fuel because you're atomizing it better. Everything, it's just a great combination. It's been really great to see these independently they were developed, but the combination of them is real synergy. Like we've talked about in other webinars about oil chemistry, hey, ZDP, zinc's a great additive. Well, moly's a great additive. Well, when you put them together, they're better. It's like chocolate and peanut butter, making a Reese's bar. Reese's is better than just having chocolate or peanut butter by itself. It's the synergy of the two. And that these technologies are really great at doing that, which makes this so exciting.
It's and latching onto that, Lake, we have customers that run the speed of air technology and even DFC during testing. The first, normally after about 800 miles, or 300 miles, your oil is black in a diesel. With this combination of this total seal ring and the speed of air technology, we have seen results that over 2,000 miles and the oil is still pretty clear and clean, which is just unbelievable. And the evolution the dimples have made through time is pretty interesting. I have here a piston, and this is kind of a beast. This is a cat where it all started. And you can see there's as many dimples as they could put on this as possible. And over time, we have come to placing them strategically and going back to what Bill was talking about, the way the air comes into the combustion chamber, the way the injector is positioned and how it sprays. Where we have dimples is quite a technology for different applications. The one thing we have not talked about either is some of the coatings we're doing. We're using a Cerakote coating to keep the heat from dissipating into the piston as much as possible. We want to keep that in the combustion chamber as much as possible to get the maximum result, obviously.
So Brad, one of the things that's interesting in just analyzing Dimpled was that when I approached Matt from DFC, one of the things we thought about was how to create the best possible environment for this all to work together, like sometimes refers to it as soup. And you start to make assumptions about things in our industry that, you know, there's a lot of innovative people that have done a lot of really good work. So we knew that Speed of Air had already used a thermal barrier coating. That contributes to what that gapless second ring does. It supplies extra energy back to the turbocharger. It reflects extra heat back into the exhaust side. And we know that makes them a little happier. It makes them a little more responsive. They seem a little lighter. The rings, obviously, the contributions those make. And then even on things like skirt coatings, UEM has its M42. We've also used line-to-lines abradable coatings. Anything that will help increase efficiency, keep the piston more square in the bore, allow the rings to do their work better, longer. We made assumptions about some of those things and added that into the mix. So it's a combination of all those things that contribute to make the Speed of Air high performance piston what it is.
That's fascinating. You guys have talked a little bit about testing on the applications and all of that. What type of testing has been done? And I know you mentioned some of the results, but what can you expand on?
This is really where Bill comes in, because DFC is the one that has done a lot of testing, mainly on the diesels. And so, Bill, I mean.
So there's people's assumptions about testing. There's your expectations about testing. And then there's the reality that we find ourselves in. And I'll explain that a little bit. So this idea came to be coming out of COVID. Supply chain shortages, staff shortages, you know, despite how excited everybody was, this didn't have a line item on everybody's budget. We all still do everything we do, and we've added Speed of Air on, right? And so from a testing perspective, we had to learn how to test. We did our first truck. We were stupefied with a couple things right off the bat. First of all, it was unbelievably quiet. Like, it didn't sound like a diesel at all.
Interesting.
The second thing was there was no black smoke out of the tailpipe at all. It did not smell. It didn't smoke. We sent Scott a video of a water bottle while we were breaking it in, sitting on a valve cover. It didn't move. So we knew that we were onto something right away. Even just firing it up, it was different. So there was a local shop, Chaos Customs here, had gone to great lengths to build a customized inertia dyno for diesel trucks. You know, it had bigger weights and bigger wheels. Doing that initial testing, the owner of the truck, even during baseline, was, you know, I don't think it's getting everything that my truck has. And being the first truck, we hadn't established what the rules for testing were. This was a slightly modified Cummins truck. And so the owner said, geez, you know, I got a little eddy current cell I can turn on. We can actually add a little more load to this. Well, the engine reacted unbelievably positively. It gained like 100 foot-pounds. But unfortunately, in the time of the test, we couldn't coordinate the operator, support from the company that had supplied the dyno during the time of the test to get everything sorted out. So we'd done a bunch of baseline testing. Another customer of mine had recently purchased and installed a mainline hub dyno, which is an eddy current dyno. It uses electricity to create a very controlled load. And so I approached Neil Richards at Horsepower Solutions, and I said, hey, Neil, how do you feel about doing some diesel testing? No, they're dirty, they smell, they smoke up my shop. Probably not. I said, well, what if we had 10 or 15 of them? Oh, well, maybe we could talk. So Neil was very helpful in us being able to find sweep rates. When you're working with turbochargers, the power delivery is not linear. It's not like an aspirated engine. So we needed to find ways to create sweep rates to extract all the power, both baseline and modified, that these trucks could do. So over a period of time, we discovered that. So it'd be kind of hard to compare A to B, but we continue to evolve that. And it's been going very well. We had amazing support from Joe Malfa at Speed of Air. He helped us acquire a 5-gas analyzer so that we could measure the constituents coming out of the tailpipe. That was really, really helpful. And then it became clear that the path might be, could we test pistons in medium duty diesel trucks in such a way that we didn't modify anything? It ran on the stock ECU, the stock tune, everything as stock as possible, because if we could pursue things like SEMA certification, California Air Resources Board approval. Scott Perkhurst, the president of Speed of Air, would like to pursue clean diesel. So we would be able to learn all of the testing that we need to do in order to achieve those things. So it's dynamic. It changes. We learn every day. I think we have 26 trucks in the test schedule, and we're into 10. So we have a long way to go.
I like the idea of being able to pull up to a drive-through and not having to turn your truck off, so you can actually order, some lunch or something like that.
100%. That's a reality. It is.
Well, that's the proof in the pudding, though, that the technology works. Because, in the old days, when you had the diesels that weren't the high pressure common rail, where you had the injectors firing, the reason why the diesels are so loud was because you had one squirt, like that one big squirt of fuel that caused the combustion event to occur. And because of that, what you had is you basically had a knock event, like in a gasoline side, it's a hammer. It is detonation, right, essentially, right? That's why diesel pistons are so big and sometimes made out of steel, right? Is because it's basically detonating for it to ignite. That's that sound. When we went to high pressure common rail and piezoelectric injectors, what you began to do was have multiple small injections so that you could, as opposed to having that big sledgehammer, you got to tap, 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 and you're kind of building it up. And that's what quieted diesels down. Well, those smaller injections, it's not just a ton of fuel, just dumping it all in. It's little squirts. It allowed that fuel to atomize better, to vaporize, and begin the combustion event in a more controlled fashion. The fact that the trucks got quieter and calmer is the proof in the pudding that the dimpling is causing that better distribution of the fuel, the better atomization and vaporization is occurring because of that. That just for anybody wanted to know, that's not some kind of just, I thought it sounded better. I wanted to believe it, placebo effect. No, that's the proof in the pudding that it actually does what we're talking about it doing.
Yeah, and again, if you look at this, you can see inside of the bollard dimples, and then especially these features help with that hammering, reducing that hammering effect. And so again, if you look at the positioning of this, there's a lot of thought process behind this as to where they go and it changes. If you look at a Duramax compared to a Power Stroke, the dimple position will be different for exactly that reason. There's a lot of thought put into that. And the interesting thing is that, and excuse me, one thing is Bill was talking about, we have noticed on a lot of our test trucks is the drop of temperature on the exhaust pipe. It is amazing.
That is.
If you're vaporizing it and you're burning it in the combustion chamber, you're not burning it on the exhaust on the way out.
And it's up to 200 degrees in certain instances. It's pretty drastic.
Wow.
And so there is a lot happening and a lot of benefits coming out of this. So we have test trucks, but we also have customers. And this is I love referring to them. It's not real test data, but it is really a feedback from a guy that actually uses. We have a customer down in Texas who was hauling big loads. He was getting four miles to the gallon, 4.5. After installing these pistons, he's gone up to 6 miles to the gallon, 6.5. This guy's ecstatic. He can't stop talking about it. And he is on the SOA website. And, you can see some of the comments. It's pretty interesting.
That's amazing because again, testing gets you there, but obviously we know with any type of technology, sometimes you put things out in the real world and that's where maybe you find some of the unanticipated things. I am curious because we've talked a lot about diesel. Have you guys seen any results? Have you done anything with gas applications as well?
I'm glad you asked. I have here a Subaru piston, and as you can see, the dimpling pattern on these is quite different. You're talking about a completely different fuel. You actually have a liquid and gas mixture going into the combustion chamber, which complicates things. We have not done as much testing on this as we have on diesel, but we have a few racers. There's one racer specifically in California who uses this technology, and he uses both gas and methanol. He's got different carburetors that he uses for that application. And, he's talking about responsiveness, speed, pickup. There's a lot of positive things happening. However, the only real good test is a airplane engine that is owned by Chris Parkhurst, the Lycoming motor, Bill. You've heard about that. And the interesting thing there was they installed the pistons, the before and after, and the engine was running way rich. And these guys are really concerned that the temperature in the cylinder head needs to be right. They prefer to run it a little richer. And Joe Malfa went out with his 5-gas analyzer and started, measuring what came out of the tailpipe. He goes like, it's running way too rich. We need to lean this down. And they're like, no, we're concerned about the consequences. And I can understand when you're up there, and you're changing things, it gets a little tricky, it's different to be on 4 wheels and be able to pull over. But it was amazing once they started playing with that and leaning down that mixture, temperature started dropping. They picked up 30 horsepower. It was just, the results were just really, really positive. And so this is something that we are, we have to start doing more testing on the gasoline applications. At the moment, our biggest home runs are the DFC trucks, honestly, that they have put a lot of effort, a lot of finance, a lot of money behind testing. And it's really encouraging to see what the results they've come up with.
So Brad, to touch on the future of testing as far as gasoline and other fuels go, we've got an amazing partner up in Edmonton, Dick's Performance North and JB's Power Centers, their owner, Jim Bell. Him and I have been cooperating for several months now to put a Superflow. I've had one for years, just had nowhere to put it. And so Jim's provided a home for that. We've acquired a Gen 345 LS engine. We'll do some testing. We have some plans to do some small diesel stuff so that we can do some practical testing on smaller displacement. So we're not having to pull them in and out of trucks all the time. And then I think based on what we're seeing preliminarily, our ability to reduce NOx emissions has been incredible. And Lake, at some point, it would be great to connect with Mike Copeland and see if there's anything that we could contribute to the excellent work that he's doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, as you're talking about it, one of the things my mind goes to right away is that I believe this technology would provide even greater benefit on direct ejected gasoline engines. And for anyone that had, if you're still watching and you got any shadow of doubt, let me tell you something real quick. So the LT1, the first generation of the direct injection engines from General Motors, remember, direct injection is basically functioning very similar to a diesel. that intake charge is coming through the intake runner dry. There's no fuel going past the intake valve. All the fuel is delivered only in the combustion chamber. Now, unlike a diesel, it's not using that injection to fire off the ignition event. But if you look at that stock GM head, you would think just from, I mean, anyone that has experience with airflow, engine design, and all that, it's like you want line of sight of that valve. You want that air coming straight down and get in so it can do its thing. Yeah, you may have the valve splayed and canted to create swirl, right? Not a new idea. Anyone that's ever done anything, even with a carburetor in the old days, what were you trying to do? You were trying to get swirl. Why did you want swirl? Because you knew you had to have that turbulence to atomize the fuel, to get it to vaporize. This isn't new. This is just taking different technology and applying it to these modern diesel engines to create the same things that racers have been doing for 50 plus years. Not new. But if you look at that LT1 engine, there's not a line of sight to the valve. That valve is twisted and turned. The runner is twisted and turned. Why? It's because they're creating swirl. Because if you just ran it straight in, there's no swirl. So even though there's no fuel in it, they still created this twisted, turned intake runner to create the swirl, because they know that they have to get better atomization of that spray when it goes into the cylinder in order to get better emissions and all that, right? So it's not about volumetric efficiency at that point. It's about getting that going. So I really believe in those kind of engines, especially for people who are racing direct injection engines. If now you can start modifying your heads and get a cleaner shot at it, being able to make up for that by having the turbulence generated by the turbulators in the piston design, there's a whole another level of performance. And like you said, for a guy like Mike Copeland and what he's doing with hydrogen combustion, because it's already a gas, right? It's already a vapor going in, but you can still have to take that gas, those molecules, and get them spread out and get them equalized so you've got the proper air fuel ratio throughout the combustion chamber so you get a more even, complete burn. That's huge technology. And that's the kind of stuff that could actually save racing from any kind of EPA oversight and things in the future. So it's hard to understate how groundbreaking, how revolutionary this technology is. This shouldn't be taken as a trick of the week, some kind of weird thing like that, just put aside. This is real science. Now, that first piston that showed with all the dimples on it, right? Those are guys figuring it out. But you look at the evolution that Pim showed, from everywhere trying to do something to really begin to kind of think about it from a CFD type perspective and fine-tuning the location of the dimples for that combustion chamber, for that fuel to optimize it. Again, it's no different than any other tool we've used in the past to try to create swirl or turbulence to improve combustion. This is just a new tool, a better tool to utilize. That's why this technology and the combination of the turbulators with the gapless ring, all that comes together to create an incredibly powerful package that, even you want to call it anecdotal, the evidence that Bill and the guys at DFC have already seen backs all that up.
That's incredible. We have a couple of questions from the chat, and definitely want to get into the customer side of it, the end user side of it as well. One of the questions says, you haven't yet discussed what you are offering to us racers. Are you selling modified pistons? Can you modify a set of pistons I send you, etc.? So, where does the racer fit in on this at this point?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we are very excited and about the opportunities there. We have, like we discussed, one racer that actually is using it right now. We're working on a project with a boat racer that's going to come up where we're establishing a baseline of before and after, and which has to do with understanding where the dimples are positioned, how many dimples for a gas application. Again, the quantity and where and location on gas changes. But if there are racers out there that want to work with us and say, okay, listen, we would like to establish a baseline, and we'd love to work with them. Is there currently a piston available with dimples for race applications? No, we don't have like we can add it to our current packages. So if you see an Icon piston or KB piston you would love to use, we can have it dimpled and we can do some testing with you.
That's incredible. Another question. You've talked about dimple placement, but not dimple diameter or depth. The piston.
Yeah, well, that's the cook revealing how to make good apple pie. We don't talk about that.
We serve you the soup. We don't give you the recipe.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about that, Brad, is that like I first saw my dimple stuff late 80s, looked dramatically different than it does today. What I love about our community is nobody ever stops trying, right? So what we've arrived at is something that works for the circumstances we're testing for. But there's so much to do. That's why I look like this. I don't get to sleep at night. You just keep thinking.
You know, one thing I love though, and you had mentioned, you know, in a diesel application, you know, going from 4 miles per gallon, 4.5 to 6 miles per gallon, and, you know, new technology and what the cost of this, why a customer might spend more to have this technology, whether it be in their tow vehicle or as it continues to evolve their race vehicle. Why would a potential customer say, I can do this over here, or I can do this? This might cost me more up front, but then what is the end result ultimately?
Can I answer this question?
Sure, go ahead.
I want to say, I want to hear everybody listen to me. This technology, this combination pays for itself in oil changes. If you just modify your oil drain interval based on oil analysis, will tell you how far you can, how much further you can go by this technology, because it's going to reduce the amount of wear in the engine. It's going to extend the life of the oil. Over time, it will pay for itself just in oil changes. So don't worry. Don't even think about what it costs you on the front side. It's more than going to pay for itself in the long run. I guarantee you. It's don't even
I'm
think
excited.
about
I want
what
to
it
say
costs.
something.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
so, and you're right, but let's talk about regen on a diesel, DEF, the use of DEF.
Yeah.
Huh? Lake, I mean, we have seen, we had a customer that did an engine swap. He came up from Idaho, drove up to Edmonton to change out the engine. On the way up, it regen 3 times. Yeah. On the way down with the SOA engine in the car or in the truck, it didn't regen once.
Wow.
Is it proof? But I guarantee you the combustion is so much cleaner. What goes out into the tailpipe is so different from what it originally was. You're going to save on DEF.
Well, and I think the
And
other
every
thing
time it
too,
regens, it's also putting more fuel in the oil,
Oh,
which is
Yeah.
shortening the oil's life. So, I mean, there's a thing called the oil to fuel ratio. I mean, it's like anyone that's got a GM vehicle that's got the oil life monitor on there, that's not a clock. It's not measuring the oil. It's not measuring the odometer. It doesn't have a timer on it, and it's not measuring the oil. But what it is doing is it knows the injector duty cycle. It knows how much oil is in there, and it knows how much fuel it put through the oil. And they have an algorithm, and they figured out that there's a oil to fuel ratio that eventually, if you put this much fuel through the engine, you will use up the oil's useful life. That's how it works. It's great technology.
so out of our
reduce the amount of
trifecta,
fuel going into the engine. Guess what? I extend the life of the oil.
Bill?
I'll address fuel. So very simply, we haven't had a circumstance where we have not had a report of fuel mileage increases. Early on, they were so big that we actually cut back what we were reporting because it was embarrassing. We thought maybe we had done something wrong. But even just the simplest math, you know, if you've got a heavily laden truck and you're changing the oil frequently and you're going through DEF fluid and you're in that 5 miles per gallon range because you're at 30,000 pounds, simply changing that from 5 to 7 you're going to save about $15,000 in fuel every 100,000 miles. So it's like said, not only does it pay you back, it keeps on paying. I mean, these things last 300,000 or 400,000 miles. So for a circle track racer that's running race fuel, what are we going to be able to save on $600 to $1,200 drum of fuel, right? Those are exciting things that I'm interested to go test. All the different types of fuel that we might get into, right? All interesting things to go test, but at every intersection, it's been more efficient, which is awesome.
Ask Robbie Gordon how much 2.5 miles worth of fuel would be worth to him at Indianapolis.
There you go.
We
That's
actually
great.
have in-house.
I'm just
we
saying,
have-
right? How many races have been won if I had one more lap? I don't even need one fuel stop. Give me one more lap of fuel. What's that worth?
We have an in-house, here at UEM, we obviously have all kinds of tech guys that are pretty in tune with what we do. Besides, we just don't make pistons; we actually use them also ourselves. And so we have Daniel Shearholt, our engineering manager. He runs a dragster. After a lot of insistence from Scott, he finally agreed to put some Dimples pistons in his dragster. And he has seen some fuel savings. He's seen it pick up. And the really fun part happened when Joe Malfa came out with his 5-gas analyzer, and they analyzed the combustion on his, basically the exhaust pipe on his dragster. And he noticed that his NOx was way too low. And he could manipulate that in order to get more power out of that engine by just tuning that part. And so it is just amazing what it offers and what it does to a simple engine by just doing a swap from non-dimpled to a dimpled piston.
So just curious, like, where are we now on the consumer end? A question came through on the chat. What's the cost to put the dimples on a set of pistons? Are we putting dimples on pistons? Are we selling dimpled pistons? Where are we today?
So we do sell dimple pistons for, and we call it the high performance piston. It's the SOA diesel SOA technology. And so there is a SOApistons.com. You can buy diesel applications there commercially, and they're readily available. So that's something that is currently being sold as a finished product. On the gasoline side, we do not have something like that yet. That will come, but we want to do more testing. We want to understand better what we're doing. So
yeah. This is incredible, and again, it's always fun, and I love the way all three of you have also played off of each other. It's like just one more thing, and it's awesome. But what great technology! Again, a lot of times we talk about compromise in racing. If you get more here, well, you're giving up something there. This is another one of those things that we've had here on a race industry now, that it feels like you're getting more here, and here, and not giving up anything over there. And really look forward to what UEM is doing with SOA and all of that, and Total Seal piston rings, and especially as this technology continues to develop. It's just been fascinating.
But it'll be interesting to do a follow-up when we know more about gasoline and for race applications. So I see Francisco and Judy getting all excited about that. It's like, yeah. And
Sure.
so I mean, it's been great to have you on this too. So I really appreciate it. So this has been a lot of fun.
Well, it's nice because, like I said, the high performance pistons are something people can go buy right now. If you're working on a diesel application, it's a shelf part that's available that fits the stock sizes plus the oversizes, and they come with gapless second rings. So we're happy about that.
Reach out anytime to Speed of Air Engine Technologies at speedofair.com or uempistons.com, and we'll be happy to help you out in any way we can.
It's really cool to read up on this, by the way, at Speed of Air. It's just fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll definitively have you back. I mean, Lake is probably our number one guest. Has been on many times since actually the first one. So this is episode 352. So Lake, we'll do a Hall of Fame at one point, and you'll be the first integral speaker. So thank you very much for being with us today. It was a great webinar. I can't believe the 50 minutes flew by, and this webinar has been recorded. It will be posted later on the ePortrait platform. We also pushed UEM and Piston Total Seal piston rings back on the homepage of the ePortrait platform. So please take advantage of it. Next week, we will be back on Wednesday. We're going to be talking hydrogen and material with Materion. So thank you very much for being with us today. And we'll let you know when this webinar will be posted on the platform, and you'll be able to watch it if you missed it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
ePortrait is a digital platform that we've created basically to make life easier in the business community of auto racing.
ePortrait, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier.
When you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information, and then from there, it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
ePortrait really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
Land speed record holder George Poteet's Speed Demon rocketed 481 miles per hour at the Bonneville Salt Flats. You don't go that fast without ARP fasteners.
There is no way that we could go the speed that we've gone, the number of times we've gone, with a lesser quality bolt than ARP supplies to us. And we absolutely wouldn't be where we were today if it weren't for ARP.
When failure is not an option, it's ARP-bolts.com.
We're Performance Plus Global Logistics. Our team of dedicated performance industry and logistics experts get valuable cars and components to the track on time in top condition. We provide expedited logistics solutions for the performance industry using direct routes instead of deferred options, and communicate all necessary information to the appropriate resources to meet regulations and ensure a smooth transit and secure delivery, both domestically and internationally. And we exceed customer expectations by providing best-in-class service with an efficient and cost-effective system in place. Contact us today to book your next shipment.
You work as hard as your truck, and you have no time for downtime. That's why more truck owners trust Blue Def, America's #1 diesel exhaust fluid brand. Each batch is guaranteed pure, so you can avoid costly repairs caused by inferior DEF. Demand America's best for your truck. Blue Def and Blue Def Platinum. Put trust in your truck.
With Shopmonkey, we've been able to grow the shop by 20% in gross sales since implementing it in the shop. Everything that we were doing before has been sped up with Shopmonkey. All of our parts ordering, all of our approvals, all of our mechanics knowing what to do next. And I've had friends that are in the trade that own shops ask about Shopmonkey, and I highly recommend it just because of easy use. There's nothing like it with that kind of platform.
With roots in the Midwest that date back well before the Model T, Fifth Third Bank has a long history of serving the needs of automotive companies. While much has changed over the years, our passion for helping businesses put cars on the road and on the track has not. Today, we are more committed than ever as a member of SEMA, a founding member of PRI, and a sponsor of multiple race teams across several racing series.
For over a decade, Fifth Third Bank has been a staunch supporter of our industry and a great partner for many companies in the motorsports field.
Our business has been growing extremely fast, and really we could not be where we are today without Fifth Third. They provided amazing strategic advice, the capital we need to support our phases of growth.
They are true partners for me now, and what they do with their involvement in motorsports is untouched in this community.
Where can we take your business? Fifth Third Bank.